Over the past decade, there's been no shortage of political dissatisfaction in the city of Los Angeles. Rises in crime and homelessness, increased taxes, crumbling infrastructure, and an incompetent response to God knows how many events such as the Palisades fire. Many residents have voted with their feet and left town. For the ones that have stayed, no shortage of grievances and concerns, but they're looking for a voice for those concerns. Recently, an unlikely voice has arisen, that of former reality TV star and native Angelino Spencer Pratt, who is running for mayor. He joins us here today. Spencer, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. This fire it's such a blessing.
Yeah, it's a little on the nose. Absolutely. Very, very telling. Just bleeding metaphors out of that. So we'll get to that incident in the Palisades fires, which were very obviously the animating event for you in running for mayor. But from what I've gathered, your character arc here, you began to perk your ears up a little bit and get interested in LA politics, as many others did, in the few years before the fires. And you and I, at that time, had talked about some stuff here and there very selectively. So when did you start paying a little bit more attention to the political failings or just what's going on in Los Angeles, and what were your early observations?
Well, the first time that politics affected my life was COVID. I had a crystal business that was making literally a couple $100,000 a month. Gavin Newsom says it's not an essential business, shuts it down. Now I'm making $2,000 a month. So looking back, I wish I had been more like my co-star Brody Jenner, who was pushing back on COVID and the restrictions. And that was when I probably should have stepped into the fold, but I was like, oh, I'll let Brody do this. I'll just,
You saw the amount of heat that he and so many other people were getting.
Exactly. And I was like, I'm going to keep this Hills reboot going. I'm going to stay out of this.
Yeah.
But that was the first real wake-up call when politics affected my life. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to politics letting my house and my parents' house burn down. And initially I fell for the trap of, oh my gosh, it was hurricane winds, which now we know did not exist. Yeah. It was climate change. Oh my God, climate change burned my house. They had great propaganda out the gate. And then once I started looking into it, I realized, oh my God, this was the ultimate level of negligence from our state leaders, from our city leaders, from our public works. And that's when I started investigating it for my lawsuit, because I'm one of the lead plaintiffs with 10,000 other victims going after LADWP, City of Los Angeles, and Gavin Newsom State Park. Mm-hmm. And in that journey, and the amount of whistleblowers that have come forward to me that have now been under subpoena and depositions and hearing the truth, and then to find out that Karen Bass actively covered up the evidence and even hired a crisis PR firm, the Leeds firm, and used literal charity money to then pay for that cover up. When you start hearing things like that, you start freaking out.
Yeah.
And I sat along the sidelines and was thinking, okay, Caruso's going to come in and he's going to knock her out of the park.
Sure.
And he's saying everything pretty much I once said in a nicer way,
He was the supposed voice for the disaffected.
It was there, saying things. So I was like, okay. But then I'm realizing he's looking at governor.
Yeah.
He's going out to farms, and I'm like, is he not doing mayor? So I start freaking out. So I call him and I say to him, are you doing governor, or are you going after Bass? Mm-hmm. And he tells me on the phone, go after Bass. So what did I do? I went after Bass.
Yeah.
So to me, that was his way of saying, I'm not taking on Bass.
Yeah.
Whether he was still planning on running and that wasn't going to be the path he was going to win, mm-hmm. or he already knew he had personal situation that he wasn't going to run regardless. That was the moment I was like, okay, there's nobody else stepping up. And that's when I was all in.
Knew you had to put your money where your mouth is, and your time and your efforts where your mouth were. And once again, backing up, a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because I was, I've always tried to get involved in these issues, but then saw so many of my contemporaries and people like yourself who also grew up here kind of, get, at various different junctures, get interested and start paying attention. It seemed that, the crime and homelessness issue, and I imagine you looking back on it after noticing the failures and just how blatantly the political class in Los Angeles will lie straight to your face. You start looking back and you're like, wait a second, some of these things that I thought might have happened naturally, they weren't done deliberately, but clearly they were a result of failures, and looking back at the crime and homelessness problems in LA right before the pandemic and then in the pandemic. I mean, what were your views on that? Did that also seem to get you started to look at what was going on in LA and some of the failures of the people running it?
Well, thankfully, the Palisades was the last utopia that, of course, they burned down. But as I keep saying, the zombies had started coming into the Palisades, and in front of my children's elementary school and across the street at the preschool, there was this woman every day at 7:45 in the morning that was cleaning her private parts in front of the kids.
Yeah.
And the cops would come and they say, please stop doing that. And they drive away. And that was to the point where Heidi started saying, my wife, we should leave LA. I want to move on and get out of here. And I was like, no, it's only a couple.
Sure.
And which it's never okay. And I just didn't want to let go of.
Well, also you remember most through the late 90s and the 2000s, you did not see this. Right? Something happened towards the end of the 2010s where all of a sudden, and you see it's not just the eye test, it's also in the numbers, where crime rates and homelessness rates that had literally been plummeting for about 20 years, all of a sudden start to tick up. And you're like, wait a second, something's going on here. And I imagine you had a similar observation.
Yeah, I didn't understand. I had always grown up more interested in military stuff. So I always was aware of the military industrial complex. I didn't connect the dots until you start hearing billions are missing.
Yeah.
There's a homeless industrial complex, which is actually easier to launder money because with the military, they have accounting for the missiles and the bombs and the planes. With the homeless, there's no accounting. Yeah. It's, maybe they left the housing and maybe it's even easier to launder and hide the money because there's no accountability. So once I started looking into why is this happening, you're like, and what kicked it off for when I learned it was fire aid. Okay. When I saw that $100 million was raised for fire victims and it went to all NGOs that had nothing to do with fire victims, I realized, this is the scam. Yeah. They take government grants, billions of dollars of our tax money, and it goes to all these private entity NGOs. They pocket millions of dollars for their salaries, millions of dollars for their bottom lines. Yeah. Whatever they could.
And more so, and this is what I think when you talk about the homeless industrial complex, for people like us who have looked into it, you can understand, but people just hear the term. They don't understand that essentially money is raised under a seemingly charitable cause or charitable motive, right? Then you think like, okay, for instance, with homelessness, if we're going to house these people, well, someone has to build the housing. Someone's got to determine the rules about building the housing. Where are we building the housing? And then through the resolution of these issues and determining who's going to be the builder, who's the developer, that's where the waste, fraud, and abuse occurs, because all these decisions are made suboptimally. All these decisions are made for those NGOs to profit and slanted more in a bias towards the NGOs making money and less towards the problem getting solved.
What really was the biggest wake-up call in the last few months, I met with this mom, this lovely lady, Samantha, who's a lawyer, and her husband's a lawyer, and they live in Westwood. And all of a sudden, there was this there was a elderly home. They see all these old people get kicked out of the home, and then they find out that right on their block in the single-family housing neighborhood, their Weingart is putting a homeless housing spot here. Here's where it gets wild. The building was on the market for like 6 days for let's say approximately $11.2 million. 6 days later, the building sells for $28 million.
Yes.
These are the type of things that these NGOs scam. It's all cooked with the realtors and this, and everyone's getting paid. Not to mention, I think it's been 5 years. Not a single person is living in that building. It's completely open. Here's the best part. When the city gives these grants to, for instance, Weingart, $30 million property, who do you think owns that building in Westwood?
The city?
Weingart.
Yeah.
So not only are we giving this private NGO, the for-profit, money to rip this taxpayer off to buy a building, then they get to own it. And then not only that, they get to manage and be the operators of said building, charging $1 million a year, whatever, plus these beds are, I think, minimum $750,000 a bed for 90 beds. Here's where it gets even better. They still get paid if the bed's empty. They have no incentive to put anyone in these beds.
All the money, none of the money is tied to actual success.
Correct.
Right. And they can just always backtrack and default to, this homelessness isn't solved because rich people aren't paying more taxes. It's like, how many times are you going to raise our taxes? We've gone through this song and dance so many times. Something that I think a lot of people forget. 2016, right after homelessness had begun to tick up a little bit. Sure, Measure Triple H said, okay, this is it. We're going to fund $1 billion towards solving the homelessness issue, because who thinks you can't solve the issue with $1 billion? We're here in nearly a decade and about $3 billion later, and the problem doubled in size.
Let's use Karen Bass's made up lie numbers. She'll say there's approximately 40,000 unhoused homeless drug addict zombies. 40,000, that's her number. And we've spent over $1 billion, and we can't house 40,000 people with $1 billion.
Yeah.
We are in crazy town.
Go buy them a condo for $600,000. It would be cheaper than what we're doing.
We have a drug addiction problem.
Yeah.
These are addicts that they're using and manipulating as pawns in their NGO scams. They're giving them needles. They're giving them pipes. They're giving them whatever they need to stay high on the street.
Yeah.
They don't care about these people rehabilitating, getting back into their lives, going back to their families. Majority of these people aren't even from Los Angeles, but the NGOs have actually flown them here, got them buses here, because these are their racehorses.
Sure.
This is their money, and this is a business. And until we come in and stop this, which even if Mayor Bass wanted to, she's so tied in with the powers that be that she can't unplug this. It's business as usual. That is why I know as an outsider coming in, I can stop all this. And I keep telling people, and they don't, and, people in the app mentions whose brains don't work as well, don't understand when I say, I'm bringing in the criminal investigation team at the IRS. And they go, this is so stupid he is. You can't use the IRS. It's city. No, excuse me. I've had about 6 meetings with the criminal investigation team. They are ready and excited to come in because they know all the fraud is there. Yeah. They need one document to open cases on all these NGOs. Guess who has the documents? The city. Guess who has the other half of the documents? The NGOs. Guess who's never giving these documents to the criminal investigation team of the IRS? Karen Bass and the NGOs. Guess who is giving the documents? Mayor Spencer Pratt, week 1. Once they go through all these, first off, once the IRS announces we're going over to the office, I guarantee you the amount of NGOs that just shut down and say, we don't want to do business in LA. We're going to Seattle. They're all going to run.
For sure.
Like the gig will be up so fast when it's no more business as usual.
Well, we've seen it even with, I think it was called Project Home Key, where even a couple of, there was even fraud. I think a couple of people were found out, stealing or falsifying records to obtain about $26 million in false grants. I mean, the idea that that's the only time it's happened, that it's just one bad actor, is a complete fantasy.
No, the feds just arrested the one guy whose kids went to Brentwood High School.
Yeah.
He had like a Lambo or a Bentley, all these cars, stole 40. So that's one guy. Everyone's stealing 40 million, 40 million, 40 million. Weingart and these major, companies won't even audit their own selves. The feds, they just were late.
And if anything, it should be the most auditable because this is with taxpayer funds,
100%.
Right? If you were if this was a private business and someone was an investor in that business, you'd say, all right, well, we want to see how this money is spent to see that it was spent somewhat responsibly, right? If anything, you have more responsibility for transparency and insight there because it's taxpayer funds.
I just did a podcast with this guest, Nima, and he had a great quote. He said, in any other business, if $25 to $35 billion is unaccounted for, legitimately people die. They have heart attacks. They slip in their shower, car accidents. Like this is, people die in private business missing $25, $35 billion.
Sure.
And it's a great point.
At the very least, the CEO is fired. And in this case, the chief executive is Karen Bass. And it would be lunacy to allow her to remain in that role.
The stockholders would clear the whole board.
Yeah.
Everybody. If 25, 35 billion is spent and it increases a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also seen, we're going to focus on the city, but it's so interesting how in California, LA issues run in parallel with California issues. And I think, you've commented on it recently, and we've seen a lot of the waste at the state level with Gavin Newsom. And then I think a really interesting point that, I think a lot of, once again, just the voters don't really think about is that when people see fraud and abuse, some people think that, oh, Gavin Newsom must be profiting directly from this, but it's not. It seems, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. It's almost as if Gavin Newsom allows, I think the recent scandal was about hospice care, that there's programs for in-house hospice management, but really it turns out that it's just, someone's cousin or niece or daughter or nephew getting paid by the state to sit in their house with an elderly person that they may or may not be providing care to. And then even after the person is dead, they still keep on getting paid, things of that nature. And then you realize that Gavin Newsom is allowing, these people are getting paid very well off state funds and off the state coffer. And then while Gavin Newsom is not taking that money directly, the fact that these people are obtaining fraudulent taxpayer funds then motivates them to continue to support and support and vote for Gavin Newsom because, he keeps the faucet on for them.
100%. So back to the state.
Yeah.
The biggest problem, one of them, in my opinion, is in the history of California, there was times where somebody from Los Angeles represented Los Angeles in Sacramento. Mm-hmm. What's become of California is San Francisco's dreams, their utopia, become Los Angeles's nightmares. So all these little ideas they think are so amazing up near Silicon Valley's magical utopia, they destroy us here in Los Angeles, whether it's with oil, whether it's with their plant policies and protecting milk veg. All of these things hurt Los Angeles. Yeah. So we need somebody like a mayor of Los Angeles, like myself, that is going and fighting Sacramento on behalf of Los Angeles because they're making all these decisions over there in their little magical bubble that doesn't affect them, that then destroys Los Angeles. And we have no representation at all as Angelinos in Sacramento.
And you'd think at some point, hey, Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom might disagree with each other on something or try to hold each other account. They wouldn't, despite the fact that their interests are inherently adversarial because they're part of the same machine. Right? Any person who comes out of the political class in Los Angeles or California, these are career politicians. And if ever, on the national level, people can discuss whether or not we need people from the private sector. I mean, clearly we need people who are not part of the machine in the state of California. One item that you mentioned very specifically where state policy clearly affects city policy, I think you can elaborate on this one. Park management and the clearing of brush fire and state policy on that I think from my knowledge, to my knowledge, really did impact a lot of the destruction and damage from the Palisades fires.
So Newsom will try to tell you that he doesn't control CARB. Mm-hmm. CARB, he picks the board. Those are his people. Of course he does. And if he wanted to, he could demand changes. So CARB, they protect endangered bushes like the milk vetch. Please, anyone listen, go Google milk vetch. You tell me. I understand if they look like roses, beautiful. This is an ugly bush. And we protect 60 plus years of dead milk vetch. I don't protect it. Gavin Newsom in his state park protect it. They've made these plants endangered plants. So fire departments can't take their heavy equipment, their dozers, and cut fire breaks around our communities. Mm-hmm. So the Pacific Palisades has not had a proper fire break in approximately 60 years of dead fuel all the way up into people's backyards. Yet the fire department will give you a fine. Fire victims are getting them right now in their dirt lots if you have any brush on your property. But the state will let dead brush go up to the back of your property and not let the fire department clear it.
And that dead brush turned out to be a real, animating piece of the Palisades fires and really destructive.
Well, that's why prescribed fires are so important, where you do controlled burns. Even if we don't do that, let's say that's too far-fetched.
And just so everybody out there knows, a controlled burn, because you want to burn off the brush so that if another fire that is not controlled starts, it gets out of control more easily, which is what happened.
Like if you watch on a helicopter view when they're putting out a fire, you watch the firefighters going around and they start little fires in areas to shape where the fire is going. So that's how important it is. A great film is called Hot Shot. It's about the hot shots. It's a documentary, and it really, anybody that wants to actually know what they're talking about with fires, watch this film. It's on Amazon, everything. Hot Shot. It's 6 years with the hot shots in the U.S. forests fighting fires, and you'll understand so much of what California needs to do.
Absolutely.
So what happens is if you don't have because I went and met with the Chief Garcia, who's the top U.S. Forest Service fire chief. And I was quizzing him about how important a fire break is. When you have a 300-foot fire break, when the planes drop the retardant, it actually makes a moat, versus if you have no fire break, the red retardant you see coming out of the plane just goes through all the different levels of the foliage and the milk vetch and just drops. And it doesn't actually create that moat that you need to push back. Not to mention the fact that the state park, let's go back to why the Palisades burned, because a lot of people just don't even know the facts because they did such good cover up. January 1st, New Year's Eve, there was a fire. Allegedly, at first it was an arsonist, but now that case is falling apart because it ends up there's 30 plus witnesses that saw fireworks.
Okay.
The ATF also says that arsonist, the way they're saying that fire started, a cigarette or his lighter, that 8 acres could not have started with either a cigarette or a lighter. So that case is falling apart. So it's more likely it was fireworks on New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
So for right off the bat, there's jokes in the text messages between the LAFD and the state parks. Don't worry, we're not bringing up any dozers. We know about the protected plants. So the fire department already is so cautious to not mess with the plants. For instance, about a year ago, now 2 years ago, pre-fire, LADWP cut some bushes around an old pole, and the state fined them $1.5 million. That's how much they care about their endangered plants. So LAFD is not messing with any of these plants. So they go up there and they're cutting fire breaks by hand around this 8-acre fire. The fire goes out, but it's still smoldering. And it's now clear from witnesses from locals, hikers, tourists, local resident drone footage. We now have the depositions of fire department that were on scene for the mop-up that said there was visible smoldering. That means smoke coming off the ground and hot coals. And for whatever reason, they left, but it's not even the fire department's fault. It's the state park's responsibility, according to their own manual, to make sure the state park is closed and they monitor a dangerous situation before they open it back up. They ever close it? No. Actually, we have text messages. The state park rangers ask the fire departments to help them take dead brush and put it on top of the fire breaks from the day before. There's photos. They take dead brush and put it on top of the fire breaks. Legit madness.
Yeah.
We also have the text messages and the deposition from a state park ranger where the lawyers say, hey, did you see the hillside smoldering on January 6th? Yeah, I did. What'd you do? She said, I took a photo. What'd you do with the photo? Nothing. Why not? I'm not a firefighter. So they're so negligent. They're for sure losing the lawsuit. They're definitely settling. They're just waiting, stalling it out because they don't want Bass to go down before she never gets reelected.
Yeah.
They also are trying to stall this out, try to get Newsom elected. So they're going to try to stall this out for 3 years, but it won't happen.
Yeah.
So then what happens is there's a known wind weather red flag event coming. They don't put one fire truck in the Palisades to pre-deploy.
Pre-deploy, right?
No pre-deployment. Newsom, not a single fire truck in his own state park.
Because also with Karen Bass out in Ghana, out of the country, despite she hasn't got enough heat for this. She literally made an express specific campaign promise. I will not leave the country. I won't travel while I'm mayor because there's so many and literally when the most intense or the highest risk activity in years or a highest risk event is hitting Los Angeles, she's in Ghana. I mean, in the past, that would have sunk a person's political career. They would have been so ashamed they would have resigned right there. The fact that people are letting her off the hook for this, truly asleep at the wheel while she's off in Ghana. This is the type of event where a mayor or the city leaders should be meeting, assessing risk management, and as you mentioned, pre-deploying certain fire resources to areas that might be at risk.
So when I met with that U.S. fire chief, he showed me on the computer, public knowledge, every city, every emergency personnel, they have this site where it tracks how dangerous the fire risk is. And he showed me 3 months in advance leading up to January 7th, the entire area is bright red because they were tracking. This was the driest time and there was no rains coming. It wasn't that they just knew about it on that Wednesday. They've known about it for months. He told me he had his entire U.S. Forest Service team kitted up. They were on the runway. Helicopters were ready to take off because they knew any second this fire was coming. And another thing back to Newsom and his pre-deployment when he was dancing in front of our burning down town and saying that that's why he pre-deployed Cal Fires. He pre-deployed those assets to Santa Clarita, 2 hours from where there was a fire 6 days earlier in his own state park.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Not to mention what's interesting is he goes to Munich and he brags about climate change. We're 365. We're in the craziest fire. Guess what? His Cal Fire is a seasonal service. These guys go down. They're not 24/7, 365 like the U.S. Forest Service. If it weren't for the U.S. Forest Service not being seasonal like Newsom's Cal Fire, all of Brentwood would have burned down. It was Chief Bobby Garcia and the U.S. Forest Service and his tankers dropping the water at Amalfi right there in Brentwood, stopping it at Will Rogers.
Okay.
So that's a major factor. If he wasn't ready to go, all of Brentwood would have been gone.
This could have been a lot worse.
No, gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to where initial Newsom's policies affect Los Angeles across the board.
Without a doubt.
If you allow fraud in the city, if you think about all the fraud we keep finding out about, where is the headquarters of it?
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, if you've got a state and you've got programs, they're going to be more concentrated in the higher density, higher population parts of the state, just plain and simple. And people also don't realize how much bigger Los Angeles is than San Francisco. Los Angeles, you also have to separate, as you and I have talked about before, the city from the county. Los Angeles County is as big as Sweden. It's 10 million residents. Okay. It dwarfs anything else going on in the state of California. I think it's the biggest county in the country. You've got issues where the county and the city are butting heads, the city and the state are butting heads, and who the mayor of Los Angeles is, that has an effect well beyond the actual boundaries of the city, because it is so big, it is so important. Specific, in terms of, where more so in what was the failures and the incompetency around the fires, and not just the failures, but just outright fraud and bad faith. And this is something that even the LA Times admitted, that Karen Bass going and having an after action report, which is a standard procedure and standard report for the treatment or the response to natural disasters. She had the after action report redacted and modified to hide her failures. And this is something that even the LA Times is like, Karen, you've gone too far, and we want to expose this misconduct on your behalf. I mean, that's when she really screwed up.
First off, I broke that story about 2 months before the LA Times. They continue to steal all my work. If you go look on my Instagram videos, everything that the LA Times broke 3 weeks before, I did a whole video about it, because these firefighters and these whistleblowers, they come to me.
They trust you.
And I then post it, and then the LA Times goes and steals my work. El Segundo Times, excuse me.
Yeah.
Makes no sense. They're called LA Times 8 years in El Segundo.
Right.
But the craziest part is they use charity money. They use the LA Fire Department Foundation's money to hire the celebrity PR crisis firm, the Leeds company, to then alter the after action report. And when I'm mayor of Los Angeles, I'm going to ask the FBI to open an investigation. I'm going to give all the emails I can. She's notorious for deleting text messages and emails. So I may have to reach out to the NSA to pull some data.
No doubt.
But obstruction of justice, where's her federal charges?
Yeah.
12 people died. This is a criminal negligence that she's covering up, that she's connected to, because I'm sure once we get discovery, which we have now, and we really dig in, the message was with her and Janice Quinones, because that's another part of the biggest
CEO
failure.
of the LADWP, right?
LADWP CEO, but she resigned and ran to Puerto Rico the day or the day after, maybe 3 days later, once the judge let the case against LADWP and the city go forward.
Interesting.
So no coincidence that she bailed on her $750,000 salary, her $250,000 bodyguard and driver.
Really?
We're paying as ratepayers. Guess what? Our LADWP rates went up 11% just this year. Did your service get better?
No.
Did water come out alkaline? Did your electricity spark a little? No. Not to mention, your LADWP rates are going to go up 7% annually every year.
Yeah.
They're not telling you why. There's no reason. It's insane. Here's the best part. Karen Bass gave her that job. Guess how much her predecessor got paid for that job?
Less than she did.
Half as much.
Yeah.
So we bring in somebody from PG&E whose company killed 86 plus people, and Newsom let them cover that up for fire. We bring in a lot of people. We bring in a PG&E executive from a very suspicious company to then fail at the highest level and let 12 people burn alive at double the salary. The fact that she gets paid $750,000, and not to mention her whole board and everybody behind her is getting like $500, $600, but they couldn't come up with the $125,000 on the tear on the San Ynez Reservoir to repair that, to get the 117 million gallons of water that is for firefighting. That is why it was built. You can go check from the LA Times when they did the photo shoot, when they literally cut the ribbon on it, even though they lie now and say it was for drinking water. Nobody was drinking that water. So the fact that they can all get nearly $1 million, but can't find $120,000 for over a year to make a repair, it gets better. While they're trying to repair that, they drain the Palisades reservoir next door to my house. Nobody even talks about that one. 6 million gallons. So then they realize, oh, actually, we can't refill that one up. This will cost too much to fix that one. So then they just leave them both empty into a fire season, as Newsom would call it.
Yeah, the incompetence, the bad faith, and simply, and to a certain extent, just the fraudulent misrepresentations are just all over the place. And this is what I've tried to communicate to people, even when talking about other issues. They're so incompetent in this regard, in this domain. Why do you think they would be incompetent and would be competent in this domain? When you do, and that's why people trying to deflect it or excuse it as this was a natural disaster. Hey, there were heavy winds. Like, how could, the fire department put it all out? Obviously it wasn't the fire department's fault necessarily, but when the incompetence is that deep and that pervasive, it contaminates everything that a government does. And I think that's what we've seen. So
7 weeks before the Palisades fire, Chief Crowley of the LAFD sent a memo to Karen Bass and said the LAFD is dangerously underfunded and she cannot protect Angelenos. What does Karen Bass do responding to that? She cuts the fire department by another $17 million. So that leaves nearly 100 fire engines on a lot that they can't repair, which makes it so 1,000 firefighters can't respond to the Palisades fire. So first off, with the winds, yes, there were hurricane winds, but they were in Altadena. For people outside of, with respect to Altadena people, I'm not sure I've ever been to Altadena. It's that far from the Palisades. So you think it's like, oh, that's down the street. No. Those hurricane winds were so far from the Palisades. We have 50 weather stations reported. The winds in Palisades never went higher than 40 miles per hour.
Really?
For the first 6 hours of the fire, when you're supposed to attack it, when you can put it out, the winds were never more than 27 miles per hour. And in those crucial moments at the ignition of the fire, guess what happened? These helicopters have to fly all the way to Pepperdine in Malibu and all the way to Encino to get water instead of 25 seconds. My wife did a podcast recently. She went in a helicopter from the San Ynez Reservoir to the Lockman site, Skull Rock, where the ignition was. I asked her to time, and this isn't even one of the Super Firehawk $17 million, dope helicopters. A nice helicopter, but not one of those. She said it was less than 30 seconds. So imagine LADWP, Karen Bass, they were prepared for a fire and had water in this reservoir. The helicopter dips their little hose in there and flies 30 seconds and drops it off the ignition instead of spending 66% of their time flying to go get water. So those 6 hours when there was no wind, that is when they put the fire out. But since we have a negligent city leadership, it was impossible. Yeah.
And people think, well, you still couldn't have prevented it. Well, you know something? If you prevented 1/3 of it, you just saved about 2,400 houses, right?
No, here's where, because you could have prevented it, because what happened is we had no plans in place for this fire. The city should have had all their plans ready to go, how to evacuate. Everyone almost died on the streets because everyone was in gridlock. There was no plan with the LAPD coordinating with the LAFD. Fire trucks got stuck in traffic. There was no pre-planning. Fires in Palisades and in Los Angeles, this is not unprecedented. While living in the house that burned down, I think I experienced 3 fires. There was one at the Getty. There was one in the Highland. This is not some alien invasion. Whoa, we weren't ready. We're well aware this happens. We have Newsom talking about in every damn interview. We should be beyond prepared. This is a great question. What level do you think our LAFD is operating at?
Against historically? Low 70%, maybe 70% of historical capacity?
We are operating an LAFD from the 1960s. With 50% more calls. 80% of those are going to homeless zombies doing the Narcan so they could just go back to ODing 10 minutes later. I talked to a fire department guy who's part of the MacArthur Park area, In one day, the other day, he did 17 overdoses. He said 2 of them actually went and got help after, but the rest, they do it and then they just go right back into the park.
Yeah.
We're paying for all of this. This is our tax money. When people say everything's too expensive, housing, it's the trickle down effect. If you stop the zombies taking all of our money, we will have money for our own public services, for the streets to look beautiful, for restaurants to be able to have people go in them instead of not going in them because encampments are in front of them or there's human poop in front of them.
Yeah.
It all is affected by them letting our city turn into worse than a third world country. I spoke with Juan from Clean LA, who's from Ecuador. He said, my friend, this is worse than a third world country.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Not to mention we have more trash, not encampments, than anywhere on planet Earth right now. And we're about to pay $1 billion in our tax money to supposedly clear this trash. It's going up 50%. They're not even telling us why our sewage is going up 80% when they already let it go straight into the ocean and you can't even swim in the water and anywhere because of the amount of fecal. They don't even test, I don't think, for fentanyl in the water. I keep saying, I think the old issue is fluoride. I'm very concerned there's fentanyl in this water.
No, the trout.
Thankfully, you got this filtered.
For sure. The fish might be getting taken out by the fent. And then, listen, everything here is towards the point of and everyone forgets of everything you just said. We pay the highest taxes other than New York City in the country. So we're pretty much paying the most for the least. And this just shows a political class. And let's be honest, and hey, the voters need to take a little bit more responsibility and showing a little more oversight and caring because they're letting the politicians get away with their deflections and their false answers because Karen Bass's response to this, or the person I'm about to ask you, is another member of the California and LA political class, their explanation will all be that this is because the rich, the successful people in this town are too greedy and not paying their fair share. And then nobody wonders, well, something, there are rich people in other cities. These other cities have far lower taxes and able to provide much better service and more optimal public goods. Nobody ever asks that question. So even beyond a Karen Bass, and people wonder, think like, oh, it can't get any worse. We have to talk about how it could potentially get worse because there's another candidate for mayor right now who's a member, is technically a Democrat, but she's technically.
No, that's not. They're not. When you become a DSA operative, you sign an oath with them, which should be illegal. It says you co-govern with the DSA, which is a socialist organization.
And let's make sure, because as we've discussed, not that many people, the amount of people that are in Los Angeles that are unaware that a major political force in LA that has probably 4 card-carrying members on the city council and others in the government right now is an outright...
And the controller.
Yeah, absolutely. Is an outright proudly socialist organization called the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA. 4 members are on the city council right now. One of those city council members' name is Nithya Raman. She can put on a good show. She's relatively personable and not bad on camera. She is an outright socialist. Just as for instance, when it was identified that there was an issue with catalytic converter theft on cars in Los Angeles, instead of doing the common sense thing that every person who's not a socialist would do is like, oh, well, this is an issue of crime and we need to blame the criminals. She blamed the automotive companies. She blamed the car companies. Oh, they should make their catalytic converters tougher to steal. Pretty much telling you is like, oh, well, your house got robbed. You should have put more bars on the windows.
Speaking of that,
thinking.
She wants more bars on the lights, she posted today. So we need bars on our lights so that they don't steal the copper. That's we're going to bar up the lights. No, they're not Democrats. If you go search on the internet, you can watch DSA people talk about how they hate Democrats and they use Democrats to get into power so they can destroy Democrats. Yeah. It is a total scam, and that's how they get away with it, by pretending they're Democrats and talking in these little care and help and when they literally are destroying our way of life.
Governed by hate for everybody. Yes, that is their resentment and hate is their governing concern. And I really think everybody listening to this conversation, if you're in Los Angeles or otherwise, please go Google Democratic Socialists of America. Go Google the DSA. The fact that they are such a palpable presence in Los Angeles and California politics and people are unaware of this is a real problem. This is something where light is the best disinfectant, because once people understand what's going on, are like, oh, of course I'm not going to vote for Nithya Raman. There will not be one problem that she thinks can't be solved by rich people paying more. Not that we already don't pay the highest taxes in the country, and people got to understand what the campaign platform of these people is. they are not just common, good faith, moderate, sensible Democrats. In fact, Karen Bass, in comparison to her, might even look like one, even though we know that she's not.
She's a communist.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've documented some of the other self-dealing and corruption from Nithya Rahman.
The video you need to go watch is her. She's a city council member right now. All
Like
you have
active,
to do
yes.
is go to her district and ask anybody. I have thousands of messages. These people hate her more than that you could hate a person.
Sure.
She fought with parents because there was encampments in front of schools.
She wanted the encampments
and
closer.
she says there's no difference between 1 foot and 500 feet.
Yeah.
When these encampments were knowingly selling fentanyl to warring gangs, were using the encampments to sell the drugs out. There's no encampments, period. There's this is a non-starter. These people are psycho.
Yeah.
Not to mention, she's a millionaire. She's a champagne socialist. Her husband is a Hollywood millionaire producer. She wants to take away our way of life while she's living in multi-million-dollar community houses, going to parties with Hollywood millionaire producers, telling you as a regular Angelino how you should live and that you shouldn't have that car because, oh, your Cadillac converter is too easy to steal. It's like putting a laptop. I should have to be able to have my laptop on my front seat too. It goes back to saying that women shouldn't wear dresses that are short because they'll get raped.
Yep. Shouldn't have worn that dress. Oh, you shouldn't have had a car that had that catalytic converter. Oh, you shouldn't have had that nice house. Someone was going to want to steal it. Shouldn't have worn that short skirt. Someone was going to want to pursue you. That type of thing. It all
connects to that
is their
psycho mindset. As mayor, my biggest priority besides saving the city is for my second term of mayor to literally have zero DSA members going into my second 4 years, where I've made such a case to all of Los Angeles that these are the worst, most toxic cancer and that every Angelino wants them out of the city. So it is a number one priority for me to stop DSA's takeover of Los Angeles.
And I think it's important for people to realize this is a nonpartisan issue because it affects Republicans and Democrats should be just as opposed to this because this helps nobody. Not even you go and look at the historical, moderate, sensible, centrist Democrat platform in Los Angeles. The DSA is completely against it. They are no friend to the Democrats.
To be clear, Karen Bass can send any email she wants about who Spencer's part. The only people that support me that I've met are Democrats. I don't know anybody that's not a Democrat in LA. I'm second in the polls, which I really know is I'm leading because the 40% that are undecided are also people that are not voting for Karen Basura. So these are Democrats that love me, that know I'm about common sense. So it's not, of course it's a nonpartisan issue because I'm running for a nonpartisan position. Mayor of Los Angeles, there's no letter next to your name for a reason because you're supposed to represent all of Los Angeles. Mayor Bass and these career politicians have literally stolen the idea of mayor and turned it into a political position and used it with their mafia money laundering crews and have hijacked it. It's supposed to be somebody who's an outsider that's not connected to all this, that is there for the people, all people that want common sense. They want their money to be accounted for. They want transparency. They want safety. The things that I speak on are not political. The fact that I even have to be saying this and Spencer Pratt saying it, we are in a scary timeline.
True words cannot be spoken right there. And I think, as you mentioned that they manipulated this notion of Democrat versus Republican, Karen Bass did use that successfully in 2022 against Rick Caruso. And she nationalized these political issues, for instance, abortion. And it's like, I'm sorry, regardless of your thoughts on abortion, even though I think she lied about what Rick's position was, the mayor of Los Angeles does not impact the issue, right? They try to use this divisive political terminology to deflect from their own failures and get voters to pay attention to issues that the mayor simply does not impact.
Mayor Karen Bass loves ICE more than any human being on earth. If ICE was not in Los Angeles, the people would have probably already burned down Getty House. But she was so good at pretending like she could do anything with federal laws. It is completely performative. We're a sanctuary state. The mayor can't do anything with ICE. LAPD can't do anything. You can yell all you want. All you're doing is pretending you're doing something when there's failures all across the city, when kids are having to literally make sure they don't get attacked by zombies on their way to school in everybody's district. So she uses ICE like it's some, magic trick. And again, I will never, as mayor, speak on anything that I can't control. We need to focus on things that the mayor can actually change and do. Another example she did where she just lied. She told all the fire victims, I'm going to waive the permits. I'm waiving. The mayor can't do that.
Yeah.
The city council. So either she's so stupid she didn't know that, or she's that big of a liar. Not sure which one's worse. But as mayor, we need somebody who's honest, who doesn't sit there making performative TikTok, social media video. She uses her like she's Che Guevara or something as her campaign. 4 more years of Karen Bass. You know what happens with ICE? 3 more, because there's 3 more years for sure of this president. 3 more years, triple ICE with Karen Bass.
Yeah.
You do that, you're getting more ICE.
She will
literally be begging for ICE to come back.
Nothing is better for her approval rate than ICE coming to LA.
It's the best thing.
Exactly.
Mayor Pratt, there's no more ICE because I'm already enforcing every law on the street, just like Mayor Lurie in San Francisco. No ICE over there because he called the feds and said, hey, I'm locking up all the bad guys.
Yep.
Not to mention, as mayor, I will do my best to, however I got to do it. We have known people in jail that are the worst of the worst in our jails, in our prisons, that our taxes are paying for, that have already gone through court and trials. Why are we paying for people that shouldn't even be in this country, that raped, murdered, and killed people? Why are we paying with our taxes? Those people should not be here.
Yeah.
Everyone should agree with that. There's not a
Karen Bass or Anithya Rahman wouldn't even admit that. They wouldn't even give that. I was like, listen, we can have, there are some parts of immigration policy where reasonable people can disagree. Nobody reasonable can disagree there, but the Anithya Rahmans, the Karen Bass of the world, their fundraising and their repute is so based on, on opposing anything ICE, they won't even agree to that, even though they know it's what's best for the people.
To be clear, as mayor, I'm enforcing the law and going after rapists, murderers, drug dealers, pimps, and I'm going to help the prostitutes right now because they're in trouble because they're all doped up on fentanyl. And that's the problem. It's an addiction. They don't want to be prostitutes right now, but they're high on fentanyl and they're trapped in the system. So they're not going to jail, but I'm going to help these prostitutes get off the street, especially before the Olympics, because right now, Karen Bass is mayor. Sex workers are going to be so drugged out and it's going to be a nightmare for the Olympics. People aren't even factoring these young women that are being trafficked, minors, that it's being allowed because of state policies in California where, you can't go after that minor.
We can't regulate public spaces.
And no, we can't. We can't touch a minor. And that's a prostitute because of Wiener's policies.
And everybody.
So, as mayor, I'm going to help these women get off the street, get sober, and get back into society. Mayor Bass, these women are going to get tricked out straight down the darkest hole on earth when all this foreign money comes in from the Olympics. Yeah,
a lot of people not even factoring in what a dislocative event, this summer with the World Cup and the Olympics are going to be. I mean, it's something that a city has to be prepared for, and we clearly aren't.
Not to mention, do you know how many dogs are getting mutilated and tortured on the streets of Los Angeles right now that Mayor Bass knows about, Nithya Rahman knows about, all these DSA people, and they say, oh no, that dog, that homeless person needs that dog. That's their dog for their mental health.
I'm sorry, they can't.
That person is going under the jail when I'm mayor. We will find a basement jail for these people that hurt and torture dogs. Not to mention our shelters. We are mass murdering dogs. If you saw the amount of sweet 2-year-old, 3-year-old, like old dogs that should not be murdered in these shelters because they're underfunded, they're run into the ground. It's not a priority because we need to launder the money through the homeless industrial complex, but I'm going to make shelters a priority in Los Angeles so we aren't mass murdering innocent dogs. That the amount of videos I have to see a day of dogs before they're killed and then the update, that dog's dead, it's psycho.
Yeah. It's one of those things, many things in Los Angeles, which you believe there's no way it can be true because it's so ridiculous. And yet it is. And seeing about how you have, you can have, even not as mayor, have a positive impact and through your platform and your ability to sway public opinion. I think one was a really good case study in where the city's been failing economically. It was recently in regards to the Baywatch movie and the filming of the Baywatch movie. People might be aware there's, I think, Los Angeles has lost over 40,000 1,000 entertainment jobs over the past 3-4 years. Clearly, and we could have another, 2.5-hour podcast about the bureaucratic red tape and difficulties of operating a business in Los Angeles, and certainly those in the restaurant, hospitality, and retail space. Certainly be receptive and feel my pain, and I feel their pain there. But just for instance, the Baywatch movie, just literally about Los Angeles, about, near the Palisades, Malibu, your hometown, our hometown, was going to film somewhere else because it was just so difficult to film in LA between the permitting process, additional fees for every category of expense you could imagine, environmentally, managing crowds, things of that nature. And I believe that, with you speaking up, convinced and, some other people speaking up in favor of the production, that they were able to maintain and keep the production in Los Angeles. Is that correct?
No, what happened is it was there and then they made it so difficult. They pretty much kicked them off the beach. And then I wrote the Substack, Don't Hassle the Hoff, and I did a video. And within 2 days, they offer them like a new 20% off, and they give whatever it is. But again, as mayor of LA, they're like, what are you going to do, Spencer? I'm not charging any projects.
Yeah.
We need like a good 6 years where we're going to take, you're working for free, no city fees, no film LA. Bring that here. We'll make the money because of the catering, people putting money back in. We don't need to charge you. Mayor Bass like, oh, guess what? Griffith Observatory, we're only charging now instead of 100,000. We'll charge you 30,000. First off, who needs to shoot at the Griffith Observatory that bad that you're going to pay $30,000?
Yeah. We
should pay you to film at that. Like it's
at
not
this point, absolutely.
With zombies around it. Like, is it apocalypse movie? Is this Walking Dead 7 in LA? No. As mayor, I'm going to work with all of Hollywood and independent projects. I saw this guy, people tagged me in this video, this director, he shot a movie now 3 years ago, didn't make $1, and he just got taxed, some crazy amount of tax from the city of LA. The movie never made $1.
Yeah.
And if you're not making money off of a project, we're not taxing you. Even if you are making money, we need like a grace period to get people back from Georgia, from Bulgaria, England. Like, how is it cheaper for everyone I know that's left in the business that they have to go leave their families for 9 months to go film Hollywood movies in London? How's that possible?
Yeah.
It's so, again, people, you can't do it. Watch me.
Yeah.
And I had a great meeting with some very smart, powerful people. And they said, what LA needs is a button pusher. And guess who is so good at pushing buttons?
Yeah.
It could be my expertise.
You invented a certain category of button push.
I will push these buttons. And there is this, there's going to be a lot of blowback in the, I don't care.
Yeah.
This is a red alert. And again, if I, God forbid, don't win, LA's done. It is so cooked. We are at breaking point to where it's unbearable to live here. 4 more years where the people that are running, that are like, we need to change. What are you going to change? You're in charge right now.
Yeah.
Karen Bass is in charge. Neethi Raman is in charge on the city council. She's the head of the homeless city council scam.
Yeah. No, this is just on repeat. The arsonist trying to take credit for trying to put out the fires and failing, and you see that on repeat, and see the failures of the political class because nobody thus far has held them accountable for their failures. And they're saying, as you mentioned right there, people concerned about you picking certain fights. It's like the fact that nobody's picking these fights is why nothing ever gets solved. It's why no problem. How does no problem ever get solved here? For instance, another one that is extremely palpable for people: LAPD and police staffing is at its lowest rate in, I believe, 30 years, right? And that is with a lot, even though we've lost some people recently, still way more people than we had 30 years ago. We're at about 8,500 officers. Recently at 10,000, the recommendation is 9,500. And I'm not seeing, you and I have discussed before, there's not really any plan in place to get it back to 9,500 or 10,000.
Mayor Bass just announced like a new initiative yesterday, some just moronic BS
with nothing behind it.
And again, we have the DSA today. They have a secret plan. They're trying to take the power of the LAPD from the mayor and the police commission right now. So we're heading into a direction where if we let these DSA people continue to run the city, not only are we going to lose the LAPD that we know right now, but these cops are not going to want this job with with a city council that hates cops. Nithya Raman, now she says she doesn't defund them because she's running for mayor, but go check her.
2020, she was all in on defund.
Go check her track record. They pivot when it's not trending, but she wants a civilian protective force. Yeah, ask anybody riding the metro how the protective ambassadors are working with crime double, everyone getting stabbed in the neck every week. It's a nightmare. So what I'm going to do as mayor, I'm going to bring hiring back to the LAPD like it was 30 years ago before Rampart. And when we hire, right now, LAPD they're hiring is the same people that's hiring the trash operators and other city employees. LAPD needs to be responsible for hiring their own officers. Right now, it takes over a year. If you want to be a law enforcement person, do you want to wait to try to get that job for a year? You need to pay your family. You got bills to pay. You're going to go get a job at Newport Beach, Manhattan Beach, Huntington Beach. You're out of here. You're not waiting around for LAPD. We need to get back to hiring, and we need to have literal speed goals here to get it a priority, not just, oh, it's fine. Here's the thing, my favorite thing, like the people hate on cops will be like, crime's down. First off, I have 1,000 messages a day from people who call 911 and it never gets picked up. It's just a busy call or they never come. So the real crime stats don't even reflect people have given up calling about not, unless you are stabbed or shot, maybe you'll call.
Yeah.
Everything else you're not.
A vagrant ends up in your backyard trespassing, scares the hell out of your kid, but doesn't draw blood. Nobody's coming.
No, not to mention crime's not down. Every single person in an encampment is illegal.
Yeah.
Drug use on the streets, illegal. All their stolen items, then all these is illegal. So crime is visibly not down.
And to the extent that it might be, it's only because there was such a massive bump after the pandemic. Of course, when you're coming from a higher baseline, you might have a decrease, but go look to comparable. The goal is not to just have less crime than we had last year. The goal is to have as little crime as freaking Norway. Okay, that's it. You want a city that's as safe as possible. And clearly we're not doing, the political class is not doing everything it can to make things as safe as humanly possible.
No, they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. They just want anything that they can deflect and not get, Karen Bass doesn't want criticism from a DSA member saying, oh, you're too cop friendly. We can't pay for public services because the police department's getting too much funding. That's their main goal. And I think that we need someone that the police know is supportive of the police. That's the only way we're going to get hiring back.
And they're just all hypocrites. That Eunice Hernandez or whatever, she just got busted for her event. She had $130,000 worth of LAPD security while being an
a big DSA.
So it's the same with all these people. They like protection, but they don't want the average Angelino to feel safe. Yeah,
they want to leave us. They want to leave us, vulnerable. But when they need public safety, they want it available to them.
Not to mention, as mayor, I'm clearing house on the police commission. We're putting actual people to hold the LAPD to the highest standard, have accountability for all cases, because nobody likes a dirty cop. Period.
Sure.
Especially not a good cop.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure we have a police commission that is holding all of LAPD accountable for all their actions. And we have body cams, and we need to just be checking everything and making sure that everyone knows that the police force is there to protect us. And by transparency and accountability, people will trust the police again. And I feel like the police commission right now has failed at that.
Yeah.
I'm also clearing out the fire commission. I said that 3 weeks ago on a podcast. Guess what? After about 20 years, 4 out of 5 members resigned all of a sudden because Karen Bass knew that was going to be what I was going to say at the debate against her. But guess what? The clowns that she rehired, I'm also getting rid of the new fire commission and putting experts on there that actually add to the commission, not just political appointees that are friends with whoever and whatever kickbacks they're getting for these power positions.
No doubt. No doubt. And, I think that we've seen it and we've tried to go over it in as much depth as possible, that beyond, we've gone over so many specific issues, but you look at these issues in totality and it truly is outsider versus the system. There's a machine, a political machine that's been running LA and the state of California. Listen, it's never good for a one party domination in a state, right? Even not that long ago, Democrats didn't win every election in California. Since they've been winning every election, the fate of California has changed. And clearly there is a machine in power that wants to hold, that has no interest other than maintaining its own power as opposed to doing right and optimizing the state in the way it runs for the people.
Well, the good news is, as mayor, all the laws I want to enforce are the Democrats' laws.
Yeah.
So I'm coming in, I don't want to make one new law. I have plenty of laws that the Democrats in power choose not to enforce.
Yes, absolutely.
And I will be the best Democratic law enforcer that this city's ever seen.
Yeah.
So any Democrat should actually love me because they've already voted for all these laws to be enforced.
Pretty much.
And I'm going to go do the work that they want and expect with their tax money for them.
You know, one thing could be make LA 2012 again. Hey, in LA in 2012, Los Angeles had the lowest crime rate of any city, 2 million residents or larger. The mayor at that time, Antonio Villaraigosa, say what you want about Antonio Villaraigosa. You know, he had his flaws, but hey, he was very friendly to law enforcement. He understood the concerns of the city in terms of public safety, and we had low crime at the time. So, you know, it seems like it's odd that modern Democrats don't have such a problem with how the city was governed by other Democrats only about 14, 15 years ago.
Mayor Lurie is a Democrat.
In San Francisco.
He is
doing a great job.
enforcing the law.
Absolutely.
San Francisco, I just met with some real estate people. They said their portfolio in Los Angeles is the worst it's ever been. San Francisco is doing amazing now. And that was never the case until Mayor Lurie. How fast? That's under 2 years. He had no experience in political, running city office. He was a businessman. The idea that you need political experience to have common sense and enforce the law is insane.
Amen.
And they keep saying, oh, he's a reality star. What's his experience? Look what the current powers that be and the experience they have has done to our city. I don't want any of that experience. I want 180 opposite. I want to stop what they're doing, undo it, and go back to what LA used to be.
Yeah. No, there is common sense. It does not take a PhD to have common sense, and our city is clearly being run without common sense. And you've definitely been the vector and the beacon for common sense in this race thus far. And clearly, you know, and the prospects are for you to continue to be. And shifting more so from policy and the failures of the political class to how you see this race going, and you know how and what are going to be big factors in it. And you know, even some of the publications that have written about you running, they can and, you know, are a little skeptical or want to be very critical. Even they have been like, you know, something, he's really good at media and he has a chance here because he's just that effective media-wise, communicating messages, creating social media content, things of that nature. And then, of course, you can trail that all the way back to you being a very innovative person in terms of, you know, earlier forms of media with reality TV. And, you know, I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts on, and kind of looking back at the observations that you made as a young man, realizing, you know, something, if I want to get, I'm not looking to be an actor. You weren't, you know, a 22, 23-year-old kid looking to go and auditioning for, you know, God knows what studio film. You're like, you know something, here's where media is going and here's how I can succeed in create a public profile and a, you know, very highly monetizable public persona. And, you know, I'd love to hear, you know, your thoughts on the evolution of using media to build a public persona all the way back from when I was like, wait a second, you know, portraying aspirational lifestyles on reality TV all the way through alerting people to problems of governance while running for mayor 20, 25 years later.
So to go back, I'm at USC. I'm a business major at Marshall School of Business. I get a D+ because I thought I would have freshman forgiveness. I did not have freshman forgiveness. I was lied to. So I transferred to political science. While there, I see that the Osbournes just got a new deal. That was on the news for $25 million, $5 million for each family member. And I thought, $25 million for a family from England that just respectfully yells, has a bunch of dogs. Yeah. Not much going on here. And I thought, I know a family that's American that is in a bigger house that has more dogs, and the stepdad yells more than Ozzy. So I called my friend that I grew up with, Brody Jenner. I said, can I film a reality show about you? And he said, if you're here at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I took a leave of absence from USC, took a camera, woke Brody up at 7 a.m. And for that summer, I kept saying, I'm filming a Fox show. Because at the time, also The Simple Life was popping off. And I thought, here's Brody, his brother Brandon, kind of like Paris Nicole vibes with the Osbournes. This is a no-brainer. I'm going to get $25 million. Next thing you know, I cut that on iMovie. I sell that to News Corp for $3.7 million at 20 years old. So I'm the youngest executive producer in the history of Hollywood for a network television show. And then Linda Thompson and Dave Foster get a divorce the day after the show airs. So I get a call from COO of News Corp, Peter Turin, and he said, I didn't buy a show about a divorce. Nowadays, I would have got a raise.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I go back to USC, and then I see, no pun intended, that my showrunner is doing this show called The Hills on MTV.
Yeah.
So I call him on his cell phone. I said, you got a new show? I was just paying you on Fox. You don't call Brody and I, put us on this new show. He said, no, it's a set cast of these women from Laguna Beach. I said, no. This is Hollywood. Brody's the king of Hollywood. I am his wingman. This is our show. So then we hijacked The Hills with the plan to get our own show on MTV, which we end up getting, called Banking on Brody. But East Coast MTV pays us more money to not do our own show.
Really?
And so we stay on The Hills. But that all happened so fast. It was just a 20-year-old chasing millions of dollars and then put me into the game.
Yeah.
I did not see my career or my identity becoming a reality television personality.
Yeah.
But once the millions of dollars start coming, and my dad is a dentist, hardworking dentist, and I would call him and say, hey, should I lean in? I'm looking real bad here. And he'd say, I'm going to work on a Saturday for $75. How much are you getting paid? And I was like, you don't want to know, Dad. Click. So that is how I got into being famous. And I was supposed to be the executive producer on the first day of filming. The story is my co-executive producer, Brant Pinvidic, says, Spencer, hop on camera and just do like because when I shot the pilot, I was always talking from a narration point. So we were missing that, heel.
Sure.
So that's why I popped on camera to do that. I didn't imagine now, no longer am I the executive producer with the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
I'm talent. So it was not a thought out plan. And then fast forward to once I discovered that they burned down my house, my parents' house, 12 of my neighbors, and 7,000 homes, and they were covering it up. Of course, now I have this social media platform and all the knowledge to use it to expose that. And then that takes us to, no one's going to step up. I have to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I said it right off the bat when you ran, I was like, listen, nobody else is putting their money where their mouth is. There's a lot of people complaining about it, but nobody else, actually throwing their hat in the ring, and all the respect in the world for that. And then, in terms of how you see, also a lot of people, they don't necessarily even understand how the electoral process in Los Angeles does work, right? So to explain to everybody, there's a general election coming up in June. Ballots will go out May 1st, I believe.
May 4th.
May 4th. Okay. And then that is non-denominational. It's Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all in the mix. And then the top two go to a runoff.
Correct. It's a jungle race, they call it. So anybody goes to the top two. It does not like the top Republican or top Democrat or the top socialist. It's whoever has the most percentage. Yeah. But I will win on June 2nd with 51%. So if you have 51%, which I do right now, because if the UCLA poll has me at 13%, 40% undecided, I'm already over 51%. Those 40% are my voters. They don't want a socialist. They don't want a communist. They want common sense. Yeah. So I won. I'm done. I've already putting my team together for when I start as mayor. We're not going to June 2nd because I win.
We're not going until November because you win on June 2nd.
I win on June 2nd.
But just real quick, don't want people out there to get complacent because those undecided voters still got to send in your ballots. Everybody.
Let's be clear. Every single human being when you get your ballot, tell them to vote Spencer Pratt, mail it in, drop it off. If you want a video dropping it off, please tag me on all social platforms and put a good song if you're going to use music, because I can't alter the music if you add the music. Correct. The key is everyone needs to show up because everyone is concerned about the fraud they're seeing with the cigarettes and downtown and it is very suspicious what's going on.
Sure.
But we can outvote. There's enough angry Angelinos, enough mothers that want to feel safe, enough women that want to walk their dogs on the sidewalk, enough women that want to be able to pump gas, the most expensive gas in the history of the world, while not being attacked. I talk to women that don't want to get out of their cars, sit there for 30 minutes until all the zombies leave. They jump out to get the gas. There's enough of these people that are done. There's enough people that are like, Why is everything so expensive? Yet they want more taxes to have more zombies surrounding the street. These people will show up and we will win on June 2nd with 51% of the vote.
I love it. Before I let you go here, another aspect of just, learning bigger lessons from all that you've gone through over the years is that, you've had to reinvent yourself, right? Clearly, from reality TV star to mayoral candidate to soon to be mayor. And to a certain extent, that could be something, just redefining oneself as, executive producer to on-camera talent. But then there is the phase, and you've spoken about this previously, where your persona is based on getting lots of attention, and all of a sudden you're not getting that attention. And then you have to look back, and when you did get attention, that was well-paid toxicity, let's call it, and you made great money off it. But you're like, wait a second, that toxic persona is not necessarily me, but I have to go back into the public eye here. And, the mindset of being able to reinvent yourself in a completely different manner than you were previously known. I mean, I'm sure you've learned some incredible lessons from that.
Well, one thing about me forever is I'm very authentic. Even when I was doing the fake persona and doing whatever it took to get ratings bonuses, everyone around me still knew it was Spencer Pratt.
For sure.
They knew the plan. It was very clear. All my actual close friends knew this was a strategy going into it. So I never changed. I got maybe caught up in chasing the millions and playing the game.
Yeah.
But once it unplugged, I went back to just being Spencer Pratt, not having to do anything to get money. But the shift for my public persona was Snapchat. I was at one time the most watched person on Snapchat, more than DJ Khaled when he was peaking, or Kylie Jenner. And all I did was just Snapchat my real self 24 hours a day. And that changed millions of people's perception of me because they got to see my real identity with nobody paying me to be anything but myself.
Yeah. And, a lot of people say, like, everyone kind of forgets the seeming reality TV relationship that you were in is still active and you're happily married 18, 20 years later. I mean, that's incredibly rare. And I think that probably wakes some people. I was like, wait a second, this wasn't someone just was kind of fabricating a relationship for TV ratings. Oh, wow. He's really built a really, sound and healthy married family life with someone from this show. I mean, I think that's something that people is kind of bubbling under the surface of people understanding, like, okay, wait a second, I'm giving this guy another shot here. And, and I think you did a great job on Snapchat and you seem, this is the way that you think, but you have to have a couple major themes. You had the crystal themes. You were showing you're going to jujitsu, I believe. You're doing the hummingbirds. It was like, there have to be a couple markers for people that people associate you with.
Yeah, I used to joke my Snapchat series or day was equivalent to Bill Murray's Groundhog Day, because I pretty much did the exact same thing every day for like 8 years. Started in the morning with Taylor Swift, Look What You Made Me Do, espresso, hummingbird feeding, jujitsu, Mexican food, family stuff. Yeah. And that was it. But again, the best thing I have going for me is I don't have to get anybody to like me or want to change their opinions about me, because what I'm saying is what they need and what we all need. So a lot of interviews are like, how are you going to switch what people say? No, I'm going to just speak the truth. Yeah. And the truth is, you could hate me, you could have hated my persona, but what I'm saying are facts and it's the truth, and we need change immediately. So I'm actually not on some quest to rebrand or get people to like me. I don't care if everybody hates me as long as they vote for me and I do what they need us to do.
No doubt. And as I said at the beginning, not the voice of Spencer Pratt, the voice of the people, the disaffected residents and voters of Los Angeles. And you've laid out an incredible case and made that voice heard today in this conversation. And, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us. And, I want to tell everybody where they can find you, support the campaign, learn more, or anything else that you would like to draw their attention to.
mayorpratt.com. Everybody else always does for mayor, but I had to already set up my future website, obviously. So, because we're going to win this, and we're going to win it with you all helping, because you don't want to breathe fentanyl at any of the parks. You don't want to step over human poop when you get your matcha. We're done with this. So go to mayorpratt.com, donate $5 if you have it. If you got 1,800, it maxes out at 1,800. I'll take 1,800, and it is all going to the best billboard campaign
No
that
doubt.
this city has ever seen. Also, if you got a good design for a billboard, DM me.
Not against that. Get us the Los Angeles that we all love and deserve. Spencer, thank you again so much. Everybody out there, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast, please like, subscribe, and download. Follow me on my socials at Matt Bilinsky, MattBilinsky. Interview with Spencer Pratt. This was fantastic. Everybody, this is the Prevailing Narrative.